Okay, finishing up chapter 3, let me just talk a few minutes on organizational culture. Each organization has a different culture. And what is that? It's a shared norms, beliefs, values that bind that organization together. Kind of think of it as the personality of the organization. So how do members in that culture identify themselves and so forth? And as you go into a new culture, you may need to understand that for the organization you're going into. So what are some of the dimensions of organization culture? Again, the book kind of had these. I think it's a good list. How do employees identify in the organization? Are they more organization focused, job focused? Are they more individual focused or group focused? Is it more a people organization versus full speed and get the task done? So forth. You can look at control, risk tolerance. Is it a high risk tolerance organization, low? What's the reward? How do they feel about conflict? So forth. So this is a good list to think about on that, but understanding that culture. So how can you do this? So study the characteristics of an organization. When you first jump in, you can just really get a pretty good view of just seeing people, talking to people. You might be able to read about the organization, ask some questions, so forth. So when you're starting out, you'll be able to observe and kind of get a good feeling. There might be some stories and folklore in the organization too that are out there, certainly depending if it's been in this town for so long and everybody knows about it. That's, you're going to hear different stories and so forth about their organization and culture. The book has this list. I'm not going to go through this, but it's a good list of, characteristics. How's the office laid out? Things like that. Decor, attire. Some places are pretty formal attire. Some are pretty casual. Some have, areas where you can go play ping pong and do games and take a break. I mean, what's the different things for the different organizations? And you can usually find out quite a bit now, especially with social media and so forth. So how do you manage within each organization? And it may be different. And you're going to have to look at this too, again, as you move up and you're dealing with some key suppliers. They all have a different culture. And we're going to talk way out in chapter 15, but what if you deal with international suppliers or things? You're going to have a different culture there. So how do you interact with all those and get a successful project? So here's a way to kind of look at it. Is the organization functionally organized or project? We just talked about that. Is the organization more people-oriented or more task-oriented? And you can look at that. And you might see here different organizations at different places. And I've been through several mergers. When I go through a merger, the different companies are merging are very likely in different spots in this plot. So how does each of those different companies that you're merging with set up? And so then how do you take all these and meld these into a new culture? It takes time depending how big those mergers are that you're going through. And you'll see that though. And as a matter of fact, you may even see different cultures within your company in different geographical regions. So Raytheon has places in Massachusetts, Texas, California, and Arizona. I would say, especially when we first merged together, there were different cultures within these different areas, locations across the company. Now, with people moving back and forth and the company's been merged for many years now. Now you're seeing one culture across the business. But again, there's so many mergers and things going on now. When you go through them, you're going to see different cultures. So culture is important. Try to understand where it's at in your company. You can usually find that out fairly quickly with, like I say, social media and questions and things like that. And then you may have to adjust in with that culture and try to fit into those different cultures. And that's just going to take some time and practice, but it's going to be very important because there is differences across those things. So this finishes chapter 3. So we've been through strategy in chapter 2. We've talked about organizations now that you're going to have to work with. Now we're going to start dealing with how do we define projects, okay? We've got our organization, we've got some strategy, we know our project. How are we going to define these? And we'll start looking at that next.